I gently signed to my son, my fingers raised against my lips. I pointed toward the small space between the trees as we slowly stepped our way forward, careful not to make a sound, else we might be heard. Weapons in hand, attention sharply focused, our breathing soft, we came upon the clearing. And I turned to him and again raised my fingers. 3, 2, 1. If society hands fathers a parenting script, it's all about discipline, duty, and control. I learnt this firsthand when I was a child, exemplified in the routine warning that I better behave or else just wait till your father comes home. I do not really have memories of playing with my dad, other than through our union of football. And I can understand why. He would leave for work at 5 a.m., come home in the afternoon tired after a long day's physical labor, then undertake his duties as a father with what little energy remained. And whilst I'm deeply appreciative of all my father did for me and my siblings, it has only been through a rediscovery of play as an adult that I came to realize a need that I had as a child that was not met. As a father now myself, I can't help wondering, what if the most significant thing I can do for my child, rather than laying down the law, was to get down on the floor, wrestle, and roll around laughing? What if in those moments, I'm doing the most serious parenting work of all? As we crept through the forest that day, I witnessed a transformation in my son that no amount of traditional discipline could have produced. This moment crystallized what I've come to understand as the missing element in modern fatherhood, the catalytic power of play. The first time I watched my son transform himself through play, I was left in a space of deep reflection. My son is a high-energy child. He never stops moving, his attention constantly shifting from one thing to the next, and he can be easily triggered through an enforcement of boundaries. Though I guess this is a shared experience amongst all children to some extent. For those precious 15 or so minutes in the forest, I witnessed him become a hunter, quietly stalking his prey, lost in the seriousness of our shared game. I took the lead of our hunting party, embodying the characteristic and qualities of what I imagined an earlier human would have done in the role. I pretended that I had taken my son out hunting for the first time, and that it was my task to educate him in the art of stalking. I barely had to direct him at all. He knew what to do, and the game was on. He followed me on our hunt through the forest, understanding through imitation and instinct that we were trying to be light on foot, else we would scare away whatever we were pursuing. He used a slow, gentle wave of his arms to move branches out of the way, quietly climbed the embankments, kept his gaze forward in the direction that we were moving. The insights rose in the pauses. I noticed how the context of play brought out patience, composure, and attentiveness without me having to force those qualities upon him. I've listened to thinkers like Jordan Peterson and Rafe Kelly speak on how play, and in particular the kind of rambunctious, challenging play that boys naturally seek out, serves as the crucible for socialization and emotional well-being. But what if my role as a father could actually serve a higher function in the fundamental development of my child's character? I've come to firmly believe that a father can be a catalytic contributor to a child's experience and engagement in play and in life beyond. But in order to do so, a man must first learn to overcome his own resistance to participation, whilst developing an understanding of how he might best do so. Upon an ongoing observation and reflection of my son's play, I've noticed 5 forms of play naturally arise. And within each form, I see that a father has a unique opportunity to contribute and shape the game. But before we go into it, let's first examine what impedes a man's engagement in play. Despite the clearly documented benefits, children today are facing dwindling opportunities for authentic play, especially the kind that emerges in unstructured, spontaneous moments. For most adults, the situation is dire, with an engagement in play rarely undertaken, if even at all. For the most part, whether or not you consider yourself as engaging in play will largely depend upon how you define play. For example, we play football, we play an instrument, we play video games, we play various roles in our lives. I define play as a voluntary, intrinsically motivated activity that is typically enjoyable, spontaneous, and process-oriented rather than goal-oriented. It contrasts with activities undertaken for serious or practical purposes. Play tends to exist outside of ordinary life, often creating its own space and time boundaries, while allowing for imagination, exploration, and freedom within flexible structures. I wonder what life might be like if we found more enjoyment and freedom in a greater range of what we do in life. So consider for yourself, when was the last time you engaged in play? What is it that prevents you from playing? Time constraints. The demanding nature of modern schedules, with their emphasis on productivity and achievement, leaves little or no room for time necessary for genuine play experiences. For many parents, life can be a series of moments that we just need to make it through. We can be held in a perpetual sense that we are struggling through the day or to make ends meet, and that there is no time to be given to something without an immediate, tangible return. But I wonder, if you reflect upon how you spend your time each week, is there truly no time available that could be reallocated to play? Digital distractions. The subheading really speaks for itself. In a digital age, the constant pull of screens, notifications, and passive entertainment increasingly displaces any form of embodied active engagement. We are not just wasting our spare time, but often our most precious moments as well. Every time we give our attention to these distractions, we are divesting ourselves from bringing about the kind of life we would truly like to live. I've seen far too often another child engrossed in play while their parent sits off to the side, eyes locked onto their phone. We rarely raise our gaze from the screen long enough to consider the cost. Social stigma. Adults have an expectation that engaging in playful activities will be met with judgment and ridicule from peers who view play as childish, unproductive, or inappropriate for mature individuals. For many fathers, engaging in unproductive body-centric play is blocked by ingrained cultural expectations, work demands, or an internalized belief that time must be useful. I would personally suggest that often these expectations are not entirely grounded in reality. As someone who frequently engages in play, and often in public spaces, I receive comments from others of a longing for the capacity to do the same, followed by the long list of reasons why they cannot. Risk aversion. An exaggerated focus on safety and avoiding failure creates environments where the beneficial risks and challenges inherent to meaningful play are systematically eliminated. To put it bluntly, the world we create for ourselves and our children is just plain boring and overly restrictive. We level out anything uneven, fence anything that might pose a thrill, and crush any form of imagination in the process. Both children and adults gain a lot when trying to do hard things, when exploring the edges of comfort and expanding the horizons of possibility. Wrapping children in cotton wool insulates them from experiencing the totality of what life has to offer. Unsupportive environments. Physical and social spaces increasingly prioritize efficiency, productivity, and control, rather than flexibility, creativity, and spontaneity needed for play to flourish. And whilst most towns would have access to some kinds of children's park, if you're lucky enough, that is, these spaces rarely offer opportunities for adults and children to play together. As a father who frequently finds himself physically constrained and frustrated by children's playgrounds, I can't help but wonder what these spaces might look like if those who designed them considered creating a terrain of play for both themselves and their children. Not knowing how. Without proper modeling or early play experiences, many individuals never develop the skills, mindsets, or repertoire of activities needed to initiate and sustain meaningful play. Many of us learn to abandon our own drive to play far too early in life. We sacrifice curiosity for willpower, forcing ourselves into behaviors and environments for the sake of an expected outcome, rather than an enjoyment in the process. And when children ask of us our engagement, many simply do not know how to respond. Incapacity to play. On a very basic level, many fathers simply do not have the physicality needed to engage in rigorous, sustained levels of play. We are all no doubt aware of how it can be difficult to maintain a level of fitness and bodily mobility as we age, yet many men simply stop caring for their overall state of fitness. In addition, psychological barriers such as trauma, excessive self-consciousness, or an overly analytical mind can create fundamental blocks to entering the state of presence and joy necessary for true play. It's my perspective that we as fathers have a responsibility to model for our children what it looks like to care for ourselves, physically, mentally, and emotionally, both when things are easy and when things are hard. Not only will this benefit your children, but I'm certain that you'll be able to find more enjoyment in the play of living. Denigration of fathers. Systems, both educational and familial, tend to default to the mother as primary caregiver, minimizing the father's catalytic potential in shaping social, emotional, and physical skill sets through play. Cultural narratives that diminish the role of fathers or portray them as incompetent caregivers undermine one of the most traditional sources of rough and tumble play and playful risk-taking for our children. Fathers themselves can sometimes be complicit in this process, willingly letting go of responsibility rather than stepping up on behalf of their role in rearing children. To resolve these blocks, we must first reframe play, not as a frivolous add-on, but as serious developmental work, and as the father's creative essential domain. For children, play is arguably the most essential way of learning, and for adults too, it remains highly valuable and often underutilized. Play is essential at all stages of life for well-being and development. The challenge for fathers in particular is to re-enter their bodies, to rediscover enjoyment in activities that don't produce anything measurable except connection, laughter, and unscripted learning. And whilst we might be out of practice, getting started again is deceptively simple. Setting aside protected time for play, where structure and rules exist only enough to create direction, without limiting spontaneous improvisation. Afterwards, an intentional space for reflection supports deeper connection and integration by inviting our children and ourselves to articulate what was felt, noticed, and learned, reinforcing the bridge between experience and their growing identity. To put this into context, as I shared in my earlier story, while exploring the local forest, I told my son we were hunters, sneaking softly, whispering, scanning for invisible prey. We held sticks in hands, practiced striking at the trunks of trees and making sudden rushes toward the target, gradually learning how to not trip ourselves or each other up in the process. Whilst we were having fun and sharing laughter, we were also developing ourselves and our relationship. Now, of course, my son at the time was 20 months old, so that meant that the majority of communication that occurred between us happened on the level of the body. Rather than through words, we expressed through action. And through his engagement, I saw his whole being change. Where before he had been randomly wandering and easily distracted, suddenly he was entirely present, his posture solid, his movement with intention, and his attention sharp. In those moments, qualities like restraint, patience, and strategic thinking became woven directly into the fabric of his experience. No lectures, no corrections, just embodied learning. And I equally felt a similar experience within me. The benefits of play are so fundamental and broad and have been widely studied, yet we somehow forget in our everyday existence. So let's list out some of the benefits explicitly. Cognitive benefits. Enhances creativity and imagination, improves problem-solving skills, boosts memory and concentration, encourages exploration and discovery, supports language and communication development. Emotional benefits. Reduces stress and anxiety, builds resistance and coping skills, increases confidence and self-esteem, facilitates self-expression and emotional regulation. Physical benefits. Develops fine and gross motor skills, improves physical health and fitness, increases coordination and balance, encourages healthy risk-taking and exploration. Social benefits. Teaches cooperation and teamwork, improves negotiation and conflict resolution, promotes empathy and understanding of others, strengthens relationships and bonds. Adult benefits. Stimulates lifelong learning and curiosity, enhances motivation and engagement, improves adaptability and openness to new experiences, provides enjoyment and a sense of wonder and fulfillment. I see that the experience of play exists on a spectrum. On one side is too much structure and limits. Think of grey, sterilized classrooms where a child must sit still, be quiet, and pay attention. This pretty much squishes out all inspiration and motivation to play. But on the other side is too much freedom or no limits. This could be represented as a space where anything goes, where there are no consequences for straying, and there is too much choice. Play essentially becomes too squishy. And somewhere in the middle is just enough structure and just enough freedom. A place in which play is best served is where there are some firm boundaries, and within those boundaries, there is space for openness and flexibility. And this is where dad might best step in. To actually maximize the benefits of play, a father has the opportunity to participate in this process, to moderate the kind of play their child is engaged in. To be clear, I'm certainly not suggesting we need to be fully engaged all the time in this process, but we can contribute in varying degrees, crafting the environments as our child plays within, as well as devoting a portion of time each day or week to create an intentional playful context. In doing so, we maximize learning potential whilst becoming a critical contributor to our child's development into mature adults, how well they socialize into the wider human community, as well as their overall sense of well-being. Plus, the relationship we'll develop with our child will be far richer and deeper. These claims are grounded in a wide body of developmental psychology. Studies have shown that father-led play predicts better emotional and behavioral outcomes while mitigating against with anxiety and social withdrawal, all whilst being a hell of a lot of fun. How we apply this perspective depends upon the context of play. I see that play exists in 5 distinct but overlapping forms: imaginative, collaborative, structured, exploratory, and physical, each serving essential and non-redundant functions in a child's growth. Allow me to describe each of these. Imaginative. Development of creativity, emotional processing, and independence, often played alone, but could also be in collaboration with another child. When a child enters play alone, they enter a world of autonomous meaning-making. They rehearse emotions, invent roles, and simulate problems, creating space for them to work through and process their experiences. This form of play cultivates imaginative fluency, self-regulation, and metacognition. Collaborative. Development of communication, empathy, and cooperation. Peer play trains children in the subtle arts of human relationships. It requires negotiation, conflict resolution, and shared imagination, building an awareness of others' feelings as well as how another's words and actions impact them. Collaborative play builds social intelligence, leadership skills, and the ability to navigate mutual agency. Structured. Development of discipline, resilience, and aspirational identity. Games are activities with an explicit objective to work towards and a set of rules to govern play. It encourages planning, management of impulses, and often requires the regulation of frustration. The outcome of play may come with delayed gratification, or even not attaining victory, teaching layers of acceptance and mutual respect. Exploratory. Development of confidence, problem solving, and risk management. A direct interaction with environment, including the navigation of landscapes or manipulation of objects. For younger children, and depending upon the environment in question, this kind of play is best served under the safe security of a caregiver. Sparks inquiry, experimentation, self-investigation, and expansion of the world of possibilities to engage. Physical. Development of physical coordination, boundary setting, and self-regulation. There is some literature that sets this form of physical, or rough and tumble, play apart due to its own unique developmental features. An energetic risk-taking physical challenge in direct engagement with a peer or adult teaches a child how to regulate their physicality, emotions, and arousal appropriately, understanding fair play and becoming well socialized. Any of these forms of play can be catalyzed or influenced by caregivers, and this is where I see an opportunity for fathers to take on a crucial and often underappreciated role. We are able to direct the kinds of play our children are engaged in by crafting intentional environments, by providing just the right amount of structure and freedom, and by learning to play ourselves. This approach to catalytic fathering transforms his role as not just a sideline support, but as the primary architect of his child's development. Some qualities we might offer to create bounds of effective play include challenging. Fathers push boundaries. They simulate risk in a safe context, which helps children develop resilience, grit, and the ability to self-regulate under stress. We might propose tasks, challenges, or objectives for our children to work towards that are just within or slightly beyond their current capacity, no matter the form of play they are engaged in. Bounded. Fathers can bring in structure, On a fundamental level, the kind of environment we have established for our child to play within becomes the bounds of play. We can look at what kinds of play this environment and its features constrain and what opportunities it affords. Additionally, we can set rules of play, act as a mediator, or be the reciprocal partner in their play. Directed. Father play is often goal-oriented, building, strategizing, winning. These are not just games, they are preparations for responsibility. Children learn how to organize energy toward a desired future. Yet at the same time, it's important to emphasize a process orientation, that the how in which we engage is just as important than for what end. Disciplined. Fathers can model immersive presence. This model focuses attention, commitment, and emotional containment in high energy moments. We can support our children to do hard things, to sit with frustration, to continue in the process when things seem to be stagnating. Whilst this may require some extra attention, support, and patience at first, we are really establishing a foundation for how they will engage throughout their lives. Now that we have a sense of the kinds of play and how we might contribute to our child's development through our presence, what's left is taking the leap for ourselves to actually learn and engage in play. The foundation here is creating the context. As with all things, when the pressures of life encroach upon spontaneous creativity, relying upon being in the mood is not the most effective way to do what we intend to do. But if we have laid out the foundations, we will increase the likelihood that we will actually do the things we want. I've put together 4 simple steps which will help you to do this. I call it the Playful 4. Intention. Set aside time in advance of, specifically devoted to play with your child or children. How much you can give here is entirely dependent upon your circumstance. Even a little can go a long way. It's critical, however, to be realistic to ensure that you will actually stick to the promises you have given. You can refer to this upcoming adventure to your child throughout the days before to build collective excitement. Environment. Create or select an environment that provides enough structure and rules to create directionality, yet enough freedom for improvisation. This could be an indoor space, the forest, a local park, a campground, sporting fields. Even urban environments offer inspiration for those who can imagine. Presence. When the time comes around, be fully present with your child. Put away your phone, bring your eyes to their level. Don't be afraid to get down on the ground or get dirty. Immerse yourself in their world whilst remembering your role in play. Even if there are other children involved, don't use this as an excuse to tune out. Remain present. Integration. Create enough space at the conclusion for discussion, learning, and integration. Reflect upon your shared experience, what they liked and did not like, what they felt, what they want for next time, and share your own perspectives. Even a single session of immersive, intentional play can reset the connection in your family, and more importantly, teach your children fundamental lessons that will endure and leave them with stories to remember. When taken seriously, play isn't a break from real life or a distraction from true education and development. It is at the heart the training ground for selfhood, relationship, and disciplined purpose. When a father reclaims play as their unique contribution, they invite their children into a realm beyond joyful exploration, but into a fundamental integration of being, disciplined, resilient, creatively alive. By truly embodying this role, we complement and support our nurturing partners and mothers. We help our child scaffold their ability to manage energy, understand consequences, and form an aspirational identity that is both independent and socially grounded. A father's absence leaves cracks in how a child constructs their place within the world. His presence through play becomes the foundation upon which a child's life can be securely built. It's my perspective that the encouragement of father-child play is not something nice to have, but essential to the well-being of our children in the modern day. Play is the training ground for life. Internal play awakens the self. Social play reveals the other. Fatherly play builds the bridge between the two, turning unbounded energy into disciplined purpose. What if your child's greatest leap forward began not with rules, lectures, or punishment, but on the living room floor, rolling, tumbling, and laughing with you? As a father, I invite you to champion play in your homes and your communities. Shift the story, build the bridge, reclaim the power of play, and let me know how it goes.